get started with today's episode, I would like to quickly read you our podcast disclaimer. This podcast is for educational purposes only, and it is not to substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. You should always speak with your physician or other healthcare professionals before doing any fasting, changing your diet in any way, taking or adjusting any medications or supplements, or adopting any treatment plan for a health problem. The use of any other products or services purchased by you as a result of this podcast does not create a healthcare provider-patient relationship between you and any of the experts affiliated with this podcast. Any information and statements regarding dietary supplements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. All right, and now we'll get started with today's episode.
Welcome back to another episode of the Fasting Method Podcast. This is Dr. Terry Lance, and this is a bite-sized episode that actually comes from a previous episode. We hope you enjoy being reminded of this, or if it's the first time you've heard this, you may want to go back and listen to the original episode, and that link will be shared in the show notes. Hope you enjoy.
Okay, the next question is one that I don't think you or I have that much personal experience with. Well, maybe that's not super true on my side of things, but alcohol during the holidays, shouldn't you? If you're going to, what you should do about it. I don't think anyone at the Fasting Method team would consider themselves to be much of a wine connoisseur, although I did try. When I met my husband, he was living in Silicon Valley, and we would often go to Napa and Sonoma. And I did try for a few years to become a wine connoisseur, but it just wasn't serving me. Sleep, mood, energy, and I ended up just cutting it out. But during that period of time, there were a few strategies that I implemented during holiday periods. Always try to find lower sugar wine if you're going to have wine. If you're in places like Canada, every province has different system that regulates the sale of alcohol. But most of these different agencies, they do require that sugar is on the label somewhere. We're both originally from Ontario, Toronto, Ontario, and that's regulated by the LCBO. And on the price tags at the stores, there you can see the sugar content. And the LCBO has a great app that you can download. And I downloaded it and I used it even when I come to California to visit my husband before we were married, because we would be in sort of a wine store, liquor store, and a bottle would look good. And I'd go into the LCBO app and I would enter the name of the wine in, and then I could see the sugar content. If sugar content's just not something that's going to be plainly listed there, you want to look for dry or extra dry wine as your option. And then if you're having white or rosé wine, it doesn't kill to add a couple of ice cubes to water it down a little bit to make sure that you're getting hydrated. And if that totally repulses you, I'm sorry for our wine aficionados out there. Just having a glass of water or two in between glasses of wine. So that's for all of the wines, red, white, rosé, getting in that water in between. So for me, I always had a rule of thumb. I would have 2 or 3 glasses of water in between any glass of wine that I had during the holidays. Spirits in general are okay. Things like vodka and gin are especially preferred amongst the lower carb or ketogenic communities or paleo community. You just need to be conscientious of what you're using as mixers. So you don't want to be using sugary beverages or ones with a lot of sweeteners. Really stick to seltzer water or carbonated water, mineral water, and then add some natural like lime juice to give it a kick. A word of caution about tonic water. Most people don't actually realize that tonic water is just full of sugar. They see water in the name. There's nothing about the word tonic that makes you think of sweetness or sugar. And then we're sort of used to drinks usually being sweet. I don't think people make the connection that the sweetness is actually coming from the tonic water. So you want to kick that to the curb. You want to add in that seltzer water. And the same rule goes if you're having a glass of whiskey, or you're having sort of a gin with some seltzer water, or vodka with some seltzer water, have a couple, 2 or 3 glasses of plain water. Could still be carbonated, could still be seltzer water, but just plain water in between your beverages. Anything else you can think of, Nadia, on the festive beverage side of things?
I do have some thoughts, and I'm actually wondering what you think about this too. Those are great tips. Of course, you and I are not great drinkers. I'm not a big drinker at all. And even if I try to join in with my husband with a glass of wine, I definitely don't finish half. And the reason is just because I think as a younger person, like you said, all I wanted was those sweet drinks. So in those, we got to stay away from for sure. So the water tip is huge because, of course, alcohol on top of it all is a diuretic. So you want to replace that water, and you really will need that, especially if you're doing what we're doing, right? Or intermittent fasting and lower carb diet. You want to make sure you're well hydrated at all times. But my only tip that I think I want to add in, because I think you've said it all, is that I really counsel my clients and our community to have those drinks, and this should be common sense, but have those drinks within your TRE windows, within, close to your meal time for a number of reasons, right? You're going to feel a lot more drunk if you're fasting and you drink than what you might be used to, keeping in mind that there's always going to be an insulin response to alcohol and really anything, right? So you want to sort of bring that into the eating window where you're already having an insulin response. If you're looking at ketones, you just, these are the things that if you want to have best results and best case scenario, if you're going to have alcohol, it for sure should be within your meals. Do you tell this to people too, Megan?
Yeah, it's absolutely great advice. So what we coach a lot of our fasting method community and coaching clients on is the holidays, is we don't want them showing up to holiday parties and grazing for hours. This will do you in, even if you're on the most strict ketogenic diet. I did this. I remember I had one holiday. I was staying with my mother for 4 or 5 days, and we would eat from the time we woke up to the time we went to bed. And I just remember being so proud that I stayed perfectly keto. I was doing a strict ketogenic diet at that time in that part of my journey. I was so proud, and I gained 4 pounds. So that chronic snacking, regardless, is going to cause insulin secretion, and it adds up at the end of the day. So, it's important to remember we don't just develop insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, obesity, metabolic syndrome from eating sugary or starchy foods that cause large spikes in insulin. We also develop it from the chronic stimulus of even low levels of insulin, and it all adds up. So what we spend a lot of time coaching people on is having these windows. So I encourage people nowadays, especially with technology, you've got your smartwatches, your smartphones. When you show up at a holiday party, set a timer for 90 minutes and enjoy the meat, the cheese, the vegetables, whatever you're going to enjoy. But you cap it at 90 minutes. So you're not there trying to awkwardly fast. You're not there trying to resist all of the food that's screaming at you. You're not having these weird, awkward interactions with your friends and family because they're uncomfortable because you're not eating. And it's not necessarily that I think we should put a lot of weight on that, but it gives you time to eat safely, responsibly, and socially. So we encourage people, have this 90-minute window where you enjoy appetizers and hors d'oeuvres. And if you're going to have a festive beverage, have it in that 90 minutes. And then when you get the quiet beep on your phone or the buzz on your watch, then you stop, and then you wait until the holiday meal. So you get to have a bit of everything, but in a controlled manner. And then you can have your next festive beverage with your holiday meal, and then just drinking water in between.
That's exactly it. And a word of caution, eat the food first and then start with the beverage, not the beverage first and then the food.
and electrolytes. I do know that like the Keto Chow fasting drops, this is not an ad at all, but that has saved some of our community members from feeling really yucky the next morning after some very holly jolly parties.
Actually, that's a great point, is the fact that you're going to have sort of that hangover feeling is a lot worse, of course, if you're not properly hydrated and if you've had unfortunately too much alcohol without enough water, like Megan talked about, and also the drinking without eating. It's all really connected. But in most cultures, right, all over the world, especially the heavy wine drinking cultures, they only drink wine with their meals, and there's usually a glass of water right next to it. So we should just follow what these people do.
Thanks, Nadia.
We certainly enjoyed bringing you this episode and look forward to bringing you another one next week. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this episode or any others, please take this opportunity to share them with your friends or loved ones. Take good care, everyone.